Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. I apologize for the sound that the camera is probably picking up. That's the fan in my bedroom because it is 95 degrees where I am and we don't currently have air conditioning in the upper portion of our house. It is being installed, but we haven't gotten it installed yet. So please bear with me. I hope it's not making too much of a ruckus in the background. Today I am actually reviewing an app. I was asked if I'd be willing to review a couple different of the apps that I make use of myself for meditation, for journeying, for plant identification, for stone identification. So this is the first of that series. The app that I am reviewing today is called Loona, which is kind of a sleep aid app, but also a relaxation aid. Not everything that it offers is designed to help you fall asleep. I would say, if anything, it's an app that's really geared towards putting you into a better mental headspace and escaping some tension and stress so that you feel better and are more likely to be able to fall asleep. And that it's great for sort of escaping the tension of your day and moving away from Facebook, moving away from the news, and doing something that is likely to help your brain move into a better headspace rather than something that is really going to actively put you to sleep. I hope that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about how it works, what I like, what I dislike. So to start with, it's a little pricey. I'm currently doing the 7-day free trial. I think I have decided I'm going to go ahead and purchase my year-long membership, that I am enjoying it enough to want to keep using it. And I'll get into the people who I feel that might be true for in a minute. It is $39.99 a year. So it is not free, but on the other end, there aren't any advertisements. I play a lot of games on my phone where my least favorite part of it is that there are ads that I have to watch that I don't enjoy watching. So one of the advantages of the fact that there's just this one yearly payment is that you don't have to put up with those. Another point in its favor is that it is just stunning. I think that it is one of the most beautiful apps I make use of on my phone. Now it might be that just aesthetically it's very pleasing to me and that other people will not agree that it is so beautiful, but I really think it's gorgeous. I've done several of the sleepscapes so far. I've done several of the side stories, and I think that the animations are well done. The worlds that it walks you through have some really beautiful styling. I really like how they've taken the fact that your phone is a lit environment. You know, you're looking at something and they've turned that into the light in the scenes as you tap lanterns, or if there's light coming down through a tree, or if there's light coming out a window, or beaming out from a crystal. I really enjoy that that's what they've done with the fact that this is a lit environment. I love how they've animated water. So it's just really pretty so far. There are lots of different stories with various narratives that go along with them, and there are different narrators, some of whom I like more than others, all of whom are talking in a very calm and meditative voice. In sort of the con column, I will say I occasionally find the narrator patronizing. They like to tell me that I've done a good job at very simple tasks, and for some reason I find that annoying, but that's probably just me. So how do you play? Each of the sleepscapes starts off white, which you then color in by tapping on objects when instructed to do so. You tend to be instructed to tap on things while also envisioning what it would feel like to touch them, or smell them, or in some way interact with them. So it'll say, you know, like, touch the tree and feel the mossy bark under your fingers, or walk along the stones, and as you're tapping them, you're supposed to be mentally putting yourself in this headspace. So there's these very meditative instructions, similar to a guided meditation, to either take you into your internal world or out into the external spirit world. When you first download the app, it does ask you about preferences, including colors and sounds that you find relaxing and your preferred worlds to explore. I don't actually know how much that personalized my experience, but I did select that I like ASMR, and I've noticed that that's one of my favorite parts, is that as you're exploring these scenes and it tells you to do things, there's sounds that accompany tapping the objects, and the sounds make sense in sort of an ASMR sort of way. You know, bushes sound like bushes, and tapping stone sounds like tapping stone. It's not perfect, obviously, but I do appreciate that detail. I think it helps keep me in the right headspace. Sometimes you can click on a smaller object, like a book, a photograph, a postcard, or a piece of paper, and it will enlarge it on the screen, and you take your finger and you rub it back and forth, and that reveals the image, so an additional part of the game. Once you have found all the objects and touched everything that it wants you to touch, the story is concluded, and you're supposed to be in a better headspace to either be relaxed or fall asleep and stay asleep, at which point it will give you the option to continue listening to the music and the background noises from the sleepscape that you've played. Now, I've tried this a couple times, and I do think that it helps me keep the mood and not immediately go seeking stimulation mentally from going right back onto Reddit or Facebook or Instagram. There are several styles of story. Some are definitely more futuristic and more science fiction oriented, and some are more like charming short stories, something that you would read in a book of short stories. Even the ones that are more like a charming short story and less fantasy or sci-fi have little elements of fantasy or sci-fi in them as well, or so it seems so far. I may be wrong, I haven't done every story. And I appreciate that it kind of straddles that line. And then some are very, very distinctly set in fantasy and folklore. And so far, those are, to no one's great surprise, my favorites. I have found they are somewhat educational. I'll get into that a little bit. Some of the folklore is very educational and accurate, and then some of it is not. So one of the things that kind of takes me out of it occasionally is when they get stuff wrong, and it kind of dumps me out of the experience. So for example, two of the things that kind of took me out of the story come from one particular sleepscape, which is centered around Baba Yaga. And I'm a huge fan of stories of Baba Yaga. And in it, they have these fly agaric mushrooms, and they say that they're bioluminescent. and light people's way through the forest. And no, that's not why fly agaric mushrooms are commonly associated with spirit walking. It's because they're entheogens. They're not bioluminescent. And then at one point they talk about the well of youth, and they give all these accurate details about, not drinking from it greedily. But the well of youth is actually more commonly associated with Kaliak, not Baba Yaga, although the two are sometimes conflated. So okay, I guess. But I'm laying there and I'm trying to relax, and my brain being my brain, it corrects those things and it kind of throws me out of the stories. There are, of course, some things where it's completely the opposite, where I actually very firmly agree with it and I'm impressed, not just in terms of it getting folklore correct, but also in terms of it just saying things that I really agree with and would absolutely say to my students. So here's a couple of the clips where I just agree with what it's saying and sort of laid there and was like, yeah, same.
Don't you think that we, as grown-ups, have totally forgotten how to see magic? Yes, you've heard me right. As we're getting older, we tend to see it less and less. And in the end, we simply lose this ability altogether. But she just smiled mysteriously. Some knowledge can be dangerous if it comes at the wrong time and place, she replied, wrapping up my purchase and putting the money in the vintage cash register. Sometimes our ancestors become sacred spirits and want to peer out into our world and take care of us. But we need to nourish them so they have the strength to influence the elements on our behalf.
Anyway, I would say that there are three primary ways that I would think a person would be able to make use of the app and why they might like it. One, it's great as just a relaxation thing. If you're anxious, if you're stressed, if you're you have 5 minutes and you want to do something but you don't want it to be a puzzle game where you feel like you have to get it right, because you can't really get this wrong. If you can't find something, you just tap on what it's asking you to look for. Tap where it has the little spyglass, magnifying glass, and it will just take you to the object. There's no point system, so you're not failing a level if it takes you a while to find something. And the whole time you're looking, it's just this very relaxing vibe. So as a tool for just relaxation, I think it's fantastic. As a tool for active guided meditation, I don't think that it would work very well if you are the kind of person who does very well sitting calmly, sitting still with no distractions, because you are having to find things in the game, or the app. It's not really a game. You are having to pay attention to their story, and there's a set time. The story runs for this long, and once you're done, you're done. But for someone who actually has a very hard time with meditation that involves clearing the mind, or just inward self-focus and self-exploration, or for a person who is aphantasic, I think actually that if you're a person who really struggles with picturing things, with visual meditations, with guided visualization, or with meditations to go out into the spirit world, you just have a really hard time picturing any of it or experiencing any of it, then this is a great tool to practice because it gives you the visual. as you're learning to try and sort of flex the muscles of like, picture this, feel this, put yourself in this headspace, well, it gives you the visual to hold. I think it's also great for people who need to be doing something with their hands when they're meditating, because you have something to do. So for some of my non-neurotypical students who cannot sit still and try and focus without something helping them, I think this would be a good one. Lastly, and I think this is probably an off-label, the app would not claim that this is what it is used for, but it is actually what I found it the most effective for. I think it's a fantastic tool for learning to access the realms that I refer to in some of my other classes as the dreamlands. I believe in a portion of the spirit world that is influenced by dreams, by fiction, by mythology, by folklore, that all sleeping minds contribute to, that all dreaming minds, including daydreaming minds or the minds of authors who are sitting there coming up with their stories, contribute to, and that sometimes we find ourselves in this realm. Now, they call it by a different name. They don't call it the dreamlands, but there's a whole storyline in Loona, a whole set of stories that you can do in order of winding up in this dream world, this fantasy world that's influenced by folklore and fiction and our belief in the spirit world, and that can be accessed through portals or through dreams. And they walk you through different landscapes in it. Now, I'll say that the landscapes are what I would consider kinder and more sterile or sanitized than what I've experienced when I've gone and explored those realms myself. But I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. So I'll give an example sort of from my own experience using this app. When I dream and I lucid dream, when I project myself out of my body in my sleep to these other worlds, sometimes my experiences are absolutely terrifying. And I've found a couple nights now using this app that I still wind up lucid dreaming after using the app, and I still wind up in these other worlds, but that I'm winding up in the pretty and kinder and gentler versions that align more with the app's version, which I just think is fascinating. And again, I don't think it's what the creators intended. I don't think it's what they mean the app to be used for. But as someone who already does lucid dreaming and who already explores these other worlds in their sleep, I actually found that to be the most useful aspect of the app. And it's something I'm going to recommend to my students who struggle with learning how to get there. Learning how to lucid dream, learning how to aim where they're going. I think that this might be helpful. Now, you do have to sort of play and then set it aside and try to go to sleep while still in that headspace. But still, I thought it might be something that might help them, and you do get a 7-day trial. Now, I do want to be clear that I am not claiming that the very fictionalized and almost Disney-fied version of the dreamlands, or as they call it in Loona, the dream world, is real. There's a cast of fictional characters that you interact with. You are playing a character in the story with a very specific apartment that gets referenced a lot, and I'm not claiming that that's real. I'm claiming that in my personal beliefs, there is a realm similar to what is being described in this fictionalized story, and that you could essentially practice the skills needed to access it, and maybe even inspire lucid dreaming experiences in which you do access it, using this to sort of train yourself to do so. I hope that that makes sense, that I'm not claiming that this particular fictionalized universe is real, but rather that there is a genuine spiritual experience that you could practice for having. Lastly, I've shown this to my partner Ian, the app and he's watched me play for the last few days. And one thing that we've both noticed is something that might be called exotification or Orientalism. All of the folklore and episodes that are set in, you know, temples and shrines, they're set in not just Japanese and Chinese culture. There's ones obviously set in Eastern European culture, like the one for Baba Yaga. But there's definitely an element of, I guess, fetishization of the beautiful folklore of these other cultures. And that's something that you'll have to decide for yourself if it's too problematic for you and if you don't want it. Now, I will note that I did both the Japanese temple and the Chinese temple, and it did present, you know, educational material about those cultures. It just did so in kind of an exotifying and fetishistic way. So it's kind of pros and cons. Not belonging to the cultures myself, I don't think it's for me to say how bad is acceptable. So that's something to keep in mind. Alright, well, if you do end up downloading the app, let me know what you liked, let me know what you disliked. Tell me if it helped you or if it didn't. If you use your 7-day trial and you decide you're going to keep it, you know, let me know. Say like, hey, I really liked it. And just for the record, I definitely was not paid for this review. I'm definitely not getting paid for any of the reviews that I do. I did this because someone asked me to. Alright everyone, I hope that you have a wonderful week. Stay cool out there as the entire country is roasting, and try and have some good, relaxing, positive experiences using either this app or whatever serves you. Be safe out there, everyone.